Thank you so much for having me. So we are going to take a very kind of quick dive into the future, but before we do, I thought I would share a little bit about me first. So here I am, a couple years ago, jumping out of a plane at 14,000 feet, looking clearly absolutely terrified, and also kind of eerily reminiscent of a little prehistoric creature, maybe a pterodactyl, with these very odd little wings. And I have this New Zealander on my back who looks more than pleased with the situation that is happening here. And why do I show you this? I show you this because on one end of the spectrum, I knew what I was doing was very risky, right? I was free falling into this unknown, but at the same time, I knew that no matter how quickly I was falling, I was always going to land on my feet. Now, this in many ways is analogous to how we have to think about the future. The risks are multiplying, but so are the opportunities. So no matter how quickly it feels like we are free falling into this unknown, it's not just about what those headwinds are. It's about the tailwinds. It's knowing that we are going to land on our feet, and it's knowing that we have all of this energy and all of this momentum coming at us from behind, allowing us to capitalize on all of those new opportunities. Now, in my work, I always was taught that for every trend, there was a complementary counter trend, and it was always like a fork in the road. But now, this is what we have to navigate. We are navigating a world that is going off in multiple directions, and we know that it is not just about one future, it is about multiple futures. And it's not just about one reality, it is about multiple realities. So what does that even mean? When we think about technology and we think about the world of work, we are living simultaneous realities in the real world, the digital world, and the virtual world. And it is up to us to seamlessly navigate all of these different futures and all of these different realities. It also underscores one very critical thing. Now, so many people will come to me and say, Erica, help me understand what my strategies are for the future. And I say, it's not just enough to identify what those strategies are. There's one thing that is more paramount than anything. And what is it? It is vision. Vision. Clearly articulate from the top down who you are, what you stand for, what matters. And then think of the strategies and have them be nimble and flexible to help you achieve what that vision is. Have that North Star in mind, know who and what you stand for and what you want to become. Now, one of the things that we are seeing is this transformation. We are not just experiencing things linearly and sequentially. We are experiencing things exponentially. We are seeing this massive transformation. And when we think about the world of work, it is not just stepwise. We are being catapulted into a completely new world. So as we see this transformation of the economy, we also see this transformation of work and labor. But one of the things, and we know that one of the things to really mark our world today is all around new understandings of time, right? When we go from linear change to exponential change and transformation, it really is about the compression of time. And it's all about the boundaryless nature of time and space. So one of the things that we see happening is that our sense of time-based boundaries is becoming weakened. The boundaries between home and work no longer apply in the same ways. And it's prompting us to even take a step back and rethink how we define traditional notions of office space. And we're seeing the coming together of all of these very disparate ideas and concepts. So we are seeing a blurring between the real and the virtual, the tangible and the intangible, the analog and the digital, and in some cases, even that which we would define as biological and technological. And all of these forces are coming together and making it so that how do we even understand geographical time? This begins to shift, and then when we think of the world of work, people are working from various parts of the world at various times of day. Now, one of the things that we like to do in our shop is make up new vocabulary, and we do it not just because it's fun, which frankly it is, but also because it's really my understanding that to get the future right, you cannot get stuck using existing words, because oftentimes they don't do the future justice. You have to take a step back and then start reinventing your own. So one of the big overarching terms to describe where we are going and why is what I call templosion. And that really simply is the fact that the biggest of things, the biggest of events, are happening in shorter and shorter periods of time. It's basically as if we were experiencing time on steroids, and it is getting rapidly truncated. And we see this playing out in myriad ways. So the average lifespan of a Fortune 500 company today could be as little as 15 years. CEO tenure is dropping precipitously, and the question as companies that used to be, what can I digitize next, now has morphed into how quickly can I transform the business so that it's agile, resilient, and ready for future disruption. The other thing is, as we see kind of this temporal implosion of time, we are seeing the rapid truncation of skills and competencies. So what we thought we knew is becoming more rapidly outdated, and we're constantly, like a hamster in a wheel, trying to reinvent how we do what we do in order to stay relevant for a changing world. And it's forcing us to then continually rethink and reinvent our own unique value propositions. So one of the things we all have to think about is a term that I borrow from physics, which is escape velocity. How can we achieve escape velocity? This very simply is the force that is required for an object to propel itself with enough speed to break through a barrier. And what is that barrier? That barrier is the current business environment. That barrier are all of the limitations of short-term thinking. That barrier is immediate stakeholder gratification and all of those short-term results and rewards and all of those systems and all of those ways of thinking and doing business that are no longer appropriate and effective for where the future is moving. And what it underscores is the mandate to really adapt and adjust all that you do in near real time to ever-shifting realities. So one of the things, when we think about this boundaryless nature of time and space, we know that when it comes to the implementation of technology, but more importantly, what it means for the future of work, it is all around one key concept, and that is non-linearity. Many people talk about the asynchronous workforce, but we are going through this fundamental paradigm shift where these one-size-that-fits-all approaches to work, learning, and family are becoming less the norm and more the exception. Now, I was a kid of the 80s, and how many of you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books? That is what life has become, a series of different pathways that you can take where you can choose your own adventure. So people now have an increasing ability to customize their life experience to be uniquely theirs, tailored to their own needs, tailored to their own preferences. And what we see is that digitization is appending all of those traditional notions of 9-to-5 work and all of these routines that we got used to in an economy that was 3 to 4 economies ago. So we need to think about how we redesign and reconfigure all of these different work styles. So as work restructuring becomes more the norm, companies are going to need to go back to the drawing board and constantly understand the fact that there are shifting wants, needs, and values of their entire employment base. So one of the other ways that we see this playing out is through generational change. Now, one of the things that frankly drives me crazy is that in an age of technological templosion, we still define generations in 12 to 15-year age cohorts, and if we're lucky, maybe we will redefine them every 10 years. This makes no sense. It makes no sense because we need to think of generational change and generations as turning over every 2 to 3 years because of the pace of technological change. So we think about our workplaces today being occupied by 5 or 6 generations working side by side. But what we have to start thinking about are micro-generations, dozens upon dozens of generations working together, and what this does from a cultural perspective, a communications perspective, feedback structures, reward structures, all of this is in need of constant reinvestment and reimagination. So one of the things that we know is that by 2030, 1 in 6 people will be over 60 years old. And by 2050, that number is expected to double. So when we think the fact that individuals are living longer, it's not just going to be about a 40-year career. It's going to be about a 60-year career. And the non-linearity of that, are these people going to have one job for 60 years? Likely not. We're going to have to think of jobs as jobbing and being a series of all of these different micro-careers. So AI, right, is on everyone's minds, and AI is also a classic example of templosion, because, right, it's all about the creation of new business efficiencies. And a better way to think about AI is it's less about us versus them. It's not about this rampant disintermediation of human labor. While, yes, aspects of those jobs are going to be automated, a more apt way to think about it is about how it is augmenting us, how it is augmenting our own skill sets, and how it is allowing us to migrate up to that next higher order value proposition to really rethink, again, how we do what we do. So we know that it is driving productivity. Human-robot teams are 85% more productive than either one alone, and it's taking a lot of the document-heavy and the time-consuming tasks that, frankly, we think, were humans even meant to be doing that type of work in the first place, or were we meant to do the work that required deeper cognition and creativity and the thinking that is more integrated and complex? So one of the things that we know in a world where it is about the symbiotic and collaborative relationship between us and these smart systems is that we are moving into what I would call a neo-humanic workforce, where we and them are becoming more blended. And this acceleration is leading to a shift in our ways of working, and it's leading to a complete rehaul of the very workforce itself. Everything from employee engagement, motivation, reward structures, all of this is going to need to shift, as well as intelligent organizational design. And we know that increased automation will require completely new management approaches, especially when teams are going to be increasingly blended. So it really forces us to go back to the drawing board to say, what does it mean to be human in this new world? And David Brooks from the New York Times perhaps said it the best. And he said, in an age of AI, major in being human. So what does it even mean to be human? If AI can come in and do a lot of that thinking for us, what is our own unique value proposition? Well, we see the elevation of completely new skills, and many of them are softer skills. We know that it's the whole garbage in, garbage out, particularly when it comes to generative AI. So the better questions that are asked, the better output you will get. The more human involvement in the technology, the more you don't see data inbreeding and kind of this mutant data that is created when humans are rendered obsolete from the equation. So human judgment, human evaluation, human extrapolation, these are things that's going to matter, not taking the data at face value, but really putting those puzzle pieces together to say, what does this mean? Like one big Venn diagram, look at those intersections to try to glean insights from there. Many of those softer skills are based on human-to-human relationships. It's really placing new emphasis on empathy, sense-making, and lived experience, that contextualized awareness that these smart systems just frankly do not have. But it also underscores a very critical point when it comes to talent management, recruiting, and retention, and that is this: the future is not about smart. The future has never been about smart. And for any parents in the room, stop even thinking about how your kids can be smart. Don't tell them I said this. They want to be smart, right? But nobody is hiring for smart anymore, because what is smart? Smart is rote memorization. Smart is linear thinking. Smart is going from A to B to B to C. And who or what is capable of smart? Systems, AI, automation, robotics, all of this. Smart is going onto software. So what matters today, what matters is intelligence. And intelligence is true critical thinking. It is a solution to a problem when you've never been faced with that problem before. And as these systems with deep learning and machine learning and the neural net, as these systems get smarter and are able to achieve facets of intelligence in a much farther out future, we then move to the one thing that will always make us uniquely human, and that is our sense of intuition. It is still relying on our gut and gut feelings and our sense of the world and the surrounding environment. So all of our metrics need to get reevaluated as well. We cannot just apply all of these metrics that were appropriate for an industrialized economy, and in some cases even an agrarian economy that was 4 or 5 economies ago, and think that it's going to work in a new and changing world. So of course, we as people, we're not going anywhere, we're still going to be critically important. It's just that our role in this evolving ecosystem is going to change. So one of the first things that we need to reevaluate, and again, this is a drum I've been banging for so long, is the fact that as we are moving into this neo-humanic world, the human resources function and the infotech function, while internally they seem very inextricably linked, enterprise technology is core to many hiring decisions and most of talent management, but at the same time they couldn't be on opposite ends of the spectrum and are completely siloed. So we know that ultimately productivity is greatest when both of these are working in lockstep. But yet how many companies are you aware of where these two functions are fully integrated? The other is we hear so much, particularly from an internal perspective, about the importance of lifelong learning. Right, and lifelong learning is great. We all have to acquire all of this new information. But at the same time, we also have to get up on the forgetting curve. We have to take a step back and think, what can we forget? Just like baggage to leave on the side of the road, what are the heuristics we use? What are the value judgments we have? What is no longer appropriate and effective for where that future is going? What can we clear out of our heads like mental cobwebs, leaving the space to acquire new information? And the other thing is, so much of our metrics are based on input. Again, I go back to what I said about the nonlinear life and the fact that 9 to 5 is getting upended, but yet we still measure productivity based on what we are putting in. We have to start shifting to output. And increasingly, well, output is also based not on time and space, so that's one of the biggest things, it's just what you're producing. But ultimately, we are moving to outcomes. And what are outcomes? That really is about capturing value and impact of our work. And what are the current metrics we have to even measure that? So productivity, when we think about this, and this is such a tough word to really get our heads around, right? Because it's ever shifting, but it isn't just about better, cheaper, faster. We know that working ultimately is less one size fits all, and how value is measured is going to have to shift. So new metrics around productivity will have to be created as work becomes simultaneously both more collaborative and also more individualized. These two concepts are going to coexist. And ultimately, productivity is no longer the metric that matters the most. The drivers of innovation today, the true drivers of innovation, are becoming two things. They are more value-based and they are more human-centric. So all of you have a blank slate, and this really is the opportunity here, but it's also the mandate to view what you do as a blank slate. Leaders are going to be increasingly tasked with creating entirely new paradigms around work, productivity, compensation, and this is not just about innovation, because a lot of innovation is like what I said about SMART. A lot of it is just straight line extrapolation. This is about imagination and reimagination and taking that vision and applying it to this blank canvas. So what are some of the macro forces to kind of wrap a bow around some of this? The first is that we know that the world is becoming more boundaryless. So when you think of your strategies, when you think of your approaches towards technology or recruiting, whatever it is, nothing is going to be linear. So I can't tell each one of you what to do because each company today, just like each one of us in this room, has to be viewed less in a mechanistic and a fixed way and more as a biological entity. Everything is organic. Everything is changing shape and form. So there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach to optimizing talent and optimizing output. We also see a new emphasis on all of those things that are starting to matter. We just need our economy and what we are compensating to catch up with this. So all of that needs to get recalibrated as we see new emphasis on fairness, honesty, transparency, value creation, even ethics and the ethical implementation of this technology. So all of this starts becoming so critically important. Now, I love this because when we think about the future, and a lot of this can seem very overwhelming, but we're all looking at the sky through a straw. All of this is limited to our own tiny portholes of perception, our own value judgments, those heuristics we use. I always say the hardest part of my job is getting towards objectivity. We all have our own preconceived notions of how things operate. So this really is a metaphor for an entirely different way to carefully consider different viewpoints, different perspectives, different futures, different realities, and to know that no matter what, we all have the capacity to positively imagine bigger and better outcomes, particularly at a time where the one constant and the one constant thing catapulting us into the future is not just change, but transformation. So on that note, thank you. I'm going to bring I think a colleague up on stage. So thank you so much for your time. We have 5 minutes for Q&A. I know that was kind of like drinking through a fire hose.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So many things to talk about, but a couple of big takeaways for me. You mentioned the need to set a vision right, and not the strategy. And to set a vision right, you have to, I think you had 3 takeaways that could be an input to the vision of what the world looks like. And so along with many things changing, I was thinking there are some things that will never change. Never say never, but you know, they are inherent to being who we are. How about taking both the inputs as we create a vision and understand where the true north is? What do you think will not change in near future that are essence to all businesses that will remain that way?
Yes, so I go back to what I said about trust, because in many ways I talk a lot about time, right, as the new currency, the new luxury value proposition, but 2 of the other critical luxuries that are kind of coming up alongside of it are trust and truth.
Right.
And these 2 things are becoming not just more critically important, but I go back to what I said about the kind of revaluing of human-to-human relationships, that no matter how quickly technology is moving, and no matter how quickly it is disintermediating aspects of what it is that we do, it can never supplant what we're having right now, a conversation,
That's right.
a dialogue.
Or the reason why everybody is here in person. That's
yes,
right.
absolutely. And the reason that we still value connectivity, and we still value the sensory and the tactile, and all of these things that still root and ground us in those real world experiences. Now, just a very quick anecdote, if I may. I don't know if anyone else here is from Rochester, New York. I now live in Rochester. And kind of the classic case of vision versus strategy is in my backyard, which is Kodak. And Kodak for so long was the dominant leader of the economy. But the cautionary tale is, what did they get wrong? They lost sight of what that vision was by prioritizing their strategies that they could have owned a future that then they kept so guarded and wedded.
That's right.
Wedded to.
Many of our customers spoke about yesterday about similar need, which is really try and understand what customer is trying to achieve and forget about your constraints, your systems, your processes, because there may be a better way to achieve it, like in example of a Kodak, and if you achieved it, it wouldn't matter. You know, that's the most important things to a customer. Second question, there are many leaders here, and the one dilemma for leaders is, if I waited for another quarter or another 2 quarters, I would know more. Which is intellectually correct. You would know more. How long? It is true forever. So how long do you wait for in this future? Because it's evolving every quarter, every month, every week at times.
Yes. So I would say that kind of the special sauce is timing, foresight, and resources. So again, nothing is one size fits all. I can't say this is the exact time to invest in technology, to implement it, and to make it a core part of your value proposition.
Yeah.
But know when the timing is right for your market, know what you're willing to invest. But again, that does go back to vision and strategy. It can't just be implementing technology for technology's sake. You have to know what the outcomes are going to be and what you want it ultimately to achieve. The other thing is, and I say this with generative AI, because everyone wants to get on that bandwagon, it's a time of both experimentation and implementation. So the learning never stops. It never stops. But also, so do the transformations. So it's going to be a common field. We all have to get more comfortable. It sounds so cliche with the uncomfortable. Like we're always going to feel like we're being left behind. But it doesn't mean that we can't start leapfrogging certain things and taking some risks in a calculated and measured way.
So these things are clear in hindsight. So in hindsight, we could say that Nokia with 80% market share could have jumped in the smartphone earlier. It is crystal clear to us now, but it wasn't as clear when it was happening. How does all of us know that it will be too late by this time, or it might be too late already? How do we know that? That is the challenge leadership has. And so how soon you can go all in? Knowing this, the future is in this direction, although I don't know everything about it. The direction is right, so let me just start walking.
Yeah, so this is also where we need an entirely new executive toolkit. So a lot of companies still don't have the positions, I think, that are required to capitalize on this transforming future. Meaning, I think about what would a CEO look like and what would they be tasked with. This is the chief ethical executive officer. And it goes beyond just putting in someone who's the head of AI, who then might not have any organizational knowledge. So what are the ethical implications of some of this? What will it mean from a reputation and risk management perspective? What does it mean from a people and a work perspective? So we need to start first, rethinking the roles and the leadership positions to tackle that, and the minds and the thinking we're bringing into our companies, and then get ahead of the challenges.
Sounds like the role of CHROs and maybe many other C roles should evolve at this point, because it's all coming together.
Well, again, the CHROs are still so focused on human input, human output, human talent management, and are not, many of them, no disrespect to CHROs, looking at the bigger picture and again, knowing that are we able to give a smart system an exit interview if it no longer works? And again, it sounds crazy, but as these systems work alongside of us and we do see this collaborative relationship, what does that mean? So again, I go back to the image of the blank slate. None of this is linear. A lot of these concepts are not going to be just very tangible outcomes based on what it is that we know. We have to rethink all of it in many ways from the ground up, knowing that we just had tectonic plates creating these earthquakes, and now we're in the series of aftershocks.
Sounds like keep learning every day, keep moving in the right direction, and evolve with it as it goes.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Give her a big round of applause.
Thank you so much.